All right, we are talking about some of our favorite sports movies from our youth. And I believe Little Giants was mentioned earlier. And I like how we're progressively going through the four major sports, at least here in the United States, right? We've touched on baseball, we've touched on basketball. Now we're going to talk a little bit of football. And when I was looking up some kind of information on Little Giants, I was surprised that this movie actually was not a success at the box office. But I feel like it didn't even make back the money that it spent to
Yeah.
create the film, which to me though, it feels like such a cult classic.
Yeah.
And so that really like surprised me.
I feel like that's the case with so many of the movies that like millennials or 90s kids are nostalgic for because Hocus Pocus was also notoriously
Yeah.
um it just at the box office it did not do well. But I think like these movies we must have breathed new life into them, like to your point earlier, Micah, just watching them over and over again on VHS. But yeah, it's like there is like a skewed perspective because I think that like when you talk to a lot of people around our age, they probably have fond memories of watching
Oh, for
this
sure.
movie.
Well,
Yeah.
I have to say, like, Little Giants was singular in being the film that you guys both separately were talking about when considering your films for this episode that I had never heard of prior to it. I
Wow.
never heard of it. I never
Wow.
knew that there was another movie with Rick Moranis in it that I had never seen or heard of or known anything about. And so you better believe
Man.
it was a joy to watch because I love that man and I loved this movie.
I can't imagine watching this for the first time. Like it must have been so so
In your
much fun.
30s.
And
It was
yeah,
amazing.
exactly. But that's a testament to that, like the fact that you thoroughly enjoyed it as, a grown human is a testament to the fact that like these movies like they're made for kids, but you can find enjoyment in them at any age.
I just think it was so wholesome. I think it was absolutely like
Hmm.
and not just wholesome because I think they're all sweet or twee in a way, but like this film had it all. It felt like a meal because you have the child actors and the whole plot with them, but then you have the story of the brothers who are both adults now in Rick Moranis and Ed O'Neill. And like Ed O'Neill's character is not a two-dimensional villain. There are moments where he's tender or introspective or actually like realizes he's a fully fleshed out person, which would be crazy if you could see in a film like this somebody just being like bullheaded and not self-aware at all, but that's not the character of Kevin O'Shea. So I was blown away actually, and I think this may be
Yeah.
Little Giants may be my favorite of the films that we're talking about today.
I
I
think you
liked
see
it that
that a
much.
lot, and maybe you're planning to speak more to this, Micah. Is in Ed's relationship with his niece on
Yeah.
screen
Yeah.
because she's a tomboy, but he's never unkind to her. He doesn't draft her, but
No.
he doesn't ever belittle her skills.
Well,
And
and
even like right at the end too, he's like, they try and like undermine the fact that she's going to come out to play, and he's like, "That's my niece, and you've just pissed her off," like because he knows that she's going to go out there and kick some ass.
right. Yeah, and I think that's part of what makes this such an enjoyable film. And you do have that sibling rivalry, as was mentioned, between Rick Moranis and Ed O'Neill's characters. And Danny O'Shea is really this kind of lovable, soft-spoken coach, where you have Ed O'Neill's character Kevin O'Shea, which is all competition all the time. And the fact that they're clashing with each other over the rights to represent their hometown, and there's a lot of football lore woven into this story. Kevin O'Shea is a former Heisman Trophy winner, as I think we touched on earlier in the show. Like his team is all decked out in Cowboys gear. So it's really an underdog story that we're seeing kind of unfold before our eyes, where you have these these ragtag group of kids going up against kind of the elite Pee-wee football team, right? And the whole reason behind this is that the town can only have one team representing them. And so the best way, of course, to figure out who's going to represent the town is to face off against each other. And it's fair to say that the underdogs have a lot of work to do in order to beat this team. But somehow, some way, they're able to accomplish it with a lot of laughs along the way.
I loved the way that this film treats like tertiary characters as well, like Kevin's wife, or the old men that keep betting on the game, and like
That's
the success
so
of the
small town, like hijinks. It's
it
so
really
funny.
feels like there's that one point where they call both coaches to tip them off about the strapping young lad that's moved to town. It's so wild, but yet it like has its heart in the right place. And speaking to Danny specifically, you know, Rick Moranis' character, so emotionally intelligent, the way that he handles, you know, he may not have all the answers, but he can meet kids where they're at and like see where they're hurting and try and account for that. And, you know, he is not entirely successful at helping his daughter with her problem because he can't. He's not the person that can, like, she needs to come to terms with kind of her own journey, and she does end up making that choice. But like, there's a point where, you know, Kevin's the one that really
right. I was just gonna say she connects more with him at times than she does with her own father.
But that also sometimes that might be how it should happen, right? So like somebody in your family should, even if it's not going to be your immediate parent, the idea that she has several people that like care about her or could give her advice that are all within the family is really, you know, nice to see.
Yeah, Becky's storyline is kind of one of it's part of the main plot, but it's kind of one of the side plots throughout the course of the film where she is really trying to figure out who she is. She goes from, you know, being a part of the team to being a cheerleader to coming in to save the day at the very end. And I think in many ways, too, you could argue that this was a movie that was a little bit before its time in you know, having a female character step in to play on a football team, a traditionally male sport.
Yeah, and I it's funny that you mention it too as being like the main plot, but also more of a side plot, because it is like the inciting incident is she gets cut from the team, then she makes up a story about there being a second team. Then everyone has to humor her because there is a second team in order to, you know, show up. And it's like it drives the sibling rivalry, which then sort of takes over as the main plot, in addition to building the team up and getting them where they need to be, while at the same time never losing sight of Becky and her would-be romance with Devon Sawa, young Devon Sawa. I did not know there was a movie Devon Sawa was in before he voiced
Final
Casper.
Destination.
Casper.
Did you ever watch Now and Then?
No.
Oh my gosh, Eric. Okay, that's your next homework assignment.
Put it
all
on
about
the
Casper,
list.
though. I've seen
Yeah,
Casper
put it on
like
the list.
150
Well,
times.
Christina Ricci and Devon Sawa are also in Now and Then.
I gotta watch this. Is it a sports movie?
No, it's coming of age, but there is like a ghost story involved. It's great. It's like the female Stand By Me of the 90s.
Oh, what?
A fantastic cast.
I'm
Rosie
already
O'Donnell,
sold.
Demi Moore, Melanie Griffith, Christina Ricci, Gabby Hoffman. A++.
Okay, I'm so sold.
Yeah. And you can text me while you're watching.
Yeah. We're gonna live stream this. It's gonna be great.
What are your thoughts on Becky / Icebox, Pam?
Yeah, I think that this was like I think that this was a fun in for girls. Not necessarily because like I mean like that girls can enjoy like sports movies that are mostly based around young boys, but I do think that it kind of helps tap into kind of the rhetoric we were starting to see pop up in the 90s, which is that girls can be anything they want to be. And I'm going to talk about the Mighty Ducks later, but there are also some girls on that team as well. So I think that kind of like ushered in this like co-ed mix into the Little League situation, for lack of a better word. But yeah, I just think that like it was such a fun element because not only was she a girl that wanted to play, but she was also the best player on both teams, like
right.
on the elite team and in terms of this like ragtag group of kids that she cobbles together to make her own team. And I think that that's what really makes it special. And it's not done in a way that feels like it's in your face. It just feels like it's just like a rule of this world that she is the best. And, you know, that feeds in really well to this whole idea that shouldn't the best just be allowed to play, you
Right.
know?
And you could
So,
tell too, like, and just with the whole her becoming a cheerleader, she did it for the wrong reasons, right? She did it
right.
because she thought that it would endear Junior to her more
Mm-hmm.
because she was told, and I'm blanking on who said this to her, but basically, look, you know, you're not going to be able to date somebody who's your teammate, right? Like
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
quarterbacks like cheerleaders. They don't like, you know, the person sitting next to them on the football
It was
field.
Uncle Kevin there in the diner. And
Oh,
he
okay.
doesn't say it in a mean way. But yeah, and I actually, like, that's the only part of this movie that confuses me to this day, because I don't think that I'm not sure if he was trying to do that to dissuade her from playing, knowing that it would give them an advantage if she wasn't on the team,
I think
or
that's
if he
right.
was just trying to
He's
like
just
straight shoot
speaking
with her.
from his own
Yeah,
experiences. Yeah, I'm sure.
exactly. Yeah, I don't think it's like a sabotage thing, which again makes the dynamic so interesting, because even though Kevin obviously wants to win, because there's this whole separate rivalry going on aside from the kids with like the two adult brothers, like I don't think he wants to do it at the expense of his niece, you
No,
know?
Or
when he,
anybody.
but at the same
Yeah.
time, he didn't, you know, kind of choose her for the team either. And it's just
Yeah.
fascinating to, because I
Yeah.
agree with you. Like, I think when he tells her that she's beautiful, he means it.
Yeah, yeah.
But I also think like it's crazy to see a situation that benefits him if she doesn't play, but he's not actively like seeking it out for that reason or exploiting that. You know,
Yeah.
like it's
And
it's wild.
and then going back to what like you were getting at, Micah, I think that the really important message here, especially for I think like young girls watching, is that like Junior still likes her anyway, and she doesn't have to be a cheerleader. So like the be yourself message is still there without actually having to be like shoved into your face like an after school special. So yeah, I think that it's done really well.
Right. And to go back what you were saying about Kevin, you see it in the moment too where Spike takes out Junior. He doesn't want to win that way. And he
Right.
says as much to Spike's
Yeah.
father. So
Yeah.
there, you know, he's not necessarily a bad guy. He's just not necessarily the person we're rooting for, or at least not the team we're rooting for in this particular movie. Just to wrap up on Little Giants, I know I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of kind of football lore tied in here. Of course, the rivalry between the Giants and the Cowboys is center stage here in this movie. There's also a really great scene with Tad where he's riding his bike and John Madden gets off a bus and asks him for directions. And this leads to Emmitt Smith and a whole host of other NFL players training the Little Giants, which I thought was really cool. And then the final play that the Little Giants run, the annexation of Puerto Rico, is based on a real football play. You hear Kevin O'Shea utter the words "fumble Rooski." That's really the name of what the play is. It's essentially like a fake out, right? Like the quarterback fumbles the ball, and it's just a sequence of plays where the offense is trying to fake out the defense in terms of identifying where the ball is. So a lot of cool stuff woven in to what was a really great movie, and a lot of just funny moments throughout too.
Yeah. I always remember the like when they're right at the end that he's like the one kid's like, Johnny, you can't pitch to Johnny, I'm Johnny, and then he makes the play anyway.
Oh, and his dad shows up
His
to
dad
see
shows
his
up.
game. Oh my god!
Yeah.
A little bit of a
So
plot hole. He
sweet.
said he'd be gone for days. But no, I'm
Came back
happy.
early for the big game.
Somebody called him.
You loved it.
Yeah.
Somebody did. Yeah, you love to see it. You love to see it.
All right. What other movies do we have?
I picked the Mighty Ducks trilogy as a whole, but I specifically want to talk about D2 because I do think that this is like a really good example of when you have a trilogy, but the sequel is actually probably the strongest movie of the lot. But to back up a little bit, the Mighty Ducks, this kind of rounds up our like major sports of the United States with hockey. And the premise of the original is that Emilio Estevez plays this lawyer, and he goes on a bender, and he gets sentenced to community service because he was drunk driving. And as part of his community service, he has to coach a peewee hockey team that is really bad. And they're also like so bad that they don't even have funding for uniforms. So they're all just playing with like a hodgepodge of like pads that aren't really for hockey, and like whatever they can find for jerseys. And yeah, it's just like similar to the Little Giants. You have like, you know, an adult rivalry going on because he has to square off against the elite team, which is the Hawks, and the Hawks is still coached by his old coach who he let down as a kid. And so like, yeah, so it's like his past coming back to haunt him. And then the kids are also trying to prove that they're, you know, just as good as the elite team in town, even though they're the worst district. So yeah, this was just like, this has always been like one of my favorite like kids sports trilogies, but I really do think the sequel shines the brightest. And so like everybody comes back and they're kind of playing in like, it's almost like the Junior Olympics. So they all head out to California, and then the big bad team is from Iceland. So they've like upped the stakes. And you have a young Kenan Thompson that comes in with this like special trick shot called the knuckle puck. And yeah, it's great. It's so much fun. Yeah. And a really good example again of like a sports movie that really plays up the comedy with these like more sobering, heartwarming moments. So
yeah. No, I remember, it's funny we were talking about like watching at home or on home video, because like I remember seeing the trailer for D2 specifically at the beginning of all the VHSs that I would watch in that decade. Like it just always like I know the quotes from the movie or some of the quotes just from the trailer, but I've never seen the Mighty Ducks. So I'm sensing a triple feature, especially on the strength of that recommendation, and knowing kind of who shows up and who's in it. Because I think, you know, hockey movies are probably the one I've seen the least of. So.
Yeah. Young Joshua Jackson, he does a really good job leading as Charlie Conway. And you know, like I think that like that trajectory of that character specifically, I think that the reason that this trilogy works so well is first of all because of the bond that he creates with his coach Emilio Estevez, but also because at the end of the day he doesn't like, he learns basically that he doesn't necessarily have to be the best player on the ice to do what's best for the team. And so it really kind of comes down to like sacrifice and like being a good teammate and stuff like that. So
that seems like a great lesson.
Yeah, it's really nice.
And it's from this movie that we ended up getting the Anaheim Ducks of the NHL.
Yes,
that would be
true.
A fascinating story.
No, it's true.
It's true.
I wasn't saying it was like a fake story. I was saying like
I thought you were going to say that's
no.
a great trivia question.
Yeah.
So what? The Ducks?
Yeah.
So they're owned by Disney.
Disney put out the first movie, and the first movie did so well that they created the Anaheim Mighty Ducks, the actual sports team.
So there wasn't a sports team in California or a hockey team?
There was not in Anaheim. There's the LA Kings have always been out there. Yeah, but they created a whole new hockey team in Anaheim. Yeah, as a result of this movie.
Are the Ducks any good? The logo's great.
I don't watch enough. Listen, this is like one of those instances where I always tell people like everything I know about hockey I learned from the Mighty Ducks. So
yeah. But then stopped there and stopped going.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like
okay.
they don't
question,
quack at the stadium.
Eric.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well, they might quack at the stadium. I would hope they do. But the Ducks did win the Stanley Cup in 2007.
Well, was that before or after the Bears dynasty? Or not Bears, the Blackhawks.
Oh.
Was like right before, because didn't the Blackhawks win in like 08, 09, and 10?
I am not a big hockey fan.
That's okay. I just remember kind of having just moved to Chicago.
Growing up, had a Chicago Blackhawks, I think it was a sweatshirt, and I don't know why.
Like, who gave it to you? What
Yeah.
the circumstances were? Huh? Maybe I gave it to you in the past. Maybe I went back in
Maybe.
time and
Ooh.
yeah. I'm looking forward to that in my future. Means I got to go to the United Center.
Yeah. Well,
So
speaking
you
of
guys
the
may
United
not-
Center, home
you
of
guys
Michael
may not.
Jordan.
You guys may not know this, but there's actually a shout out or a snide comment, not a snide comment, a joking comment that Bugs Bunny makes about the Ducks because Sylvester suggests that they name their team the Ducks instead of the Toon Squad. And Bugs Bunny says, what kind of Mickey Mouse company would name their team the Ducks? So now I just understood a joke that I heard the last week.
And you had no idea what it meant
No
just
idea.
10 minutes ago.
We're talking, of course, about Space Jam now, is the film that I chose as my second one to mention. Now, Space Jam, I just remember being the biggest movie in the world. It wasn't, but that's how I remember it. There was like the Happy Meal toy. There was like I actually got the VHS. I owned this on VHS, and I remember because it came with like a medallion, like a silver
Oh my
pendant.
God, yes, I remember that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I couldn't get it out of the plastic, and I think we ended up trying to sell the movie. It was a whole thing, but like it was so hyped, and so it just felt like it was the biggest thing in the world. If you look at like who gets top billing, it's Jordan, Bunny, back to back. It's like, here's another live action / cartoon mashup in the style of Who Framed Roger Rabbit. It's something that they really didn't used to do all that very often. And, there are some elements of this film that still hold up. I think the scenes where animation blends with live action still do hold up. I think that the film also is really heavily like autobiographical or fake autobiographical about Michael Jordan. So you do learn like some of his, childhood aspirations. You kind of see him get to be like, you kind of get to know him as a person. Like the film very heavily weighs on or utilizes the personality of an actual sports star, which makes it, I think, unique in the selection of films we're talking today. Is like, here the sports star is the star of the movie. And so it's really interesting how Space Jam is equally about this conflict with these cartoon aliens that come and they have to play a basketball game to like save the Looney Tunes. And it's also about Michael Jordan. It's about his transitioning from a basketball player to a baseball player. And then back, which was a short-lived moment in sports history, but worth noting. The whole film centers on that, basically, about people telling him he's still a ball player and him having to, like, figure it out and navigate that while at the same time having to navigate these animated creatures. So, Space Jam is one of those movies where it probably wouldn't make any sense 5 years sooner or 5 years later than when it came out. But they did make it, and it was huge. And parts of it still hold up.
I remember going to see this in theaters. And
it was
you're right,
big.
like it was a big deal. I think obviously Michael Jordan dominated the 90s, like as a sports figure.
It.
So that,
yeah.
I think that probably definitely helped propel this a lot. But I also just remember like the soundtrack was big, like everything about this movie was
R.
huge,
Kelly.
Yeah. But it's enjoyable. Like I watched this not long ago as like in like as an adult, and it was still an enjoyable
Did you see the
watch.
sequel?
I watched the first 20 minutes of the sequel and then I turned it off.
I did watch the sequel.
I have not seen it.
It's not the best. I think that you're better off just rewatching the original.
I've heard similar reviews, and I don't plan on watching it.
I will say that like the one thing that's kind of cool, but also was just like clearly a cash grab, is like Warner Brothers has like there's like this whole like solar system of like different planets, and it's all Warner Brothers properties, and like that's cool for like a second. So you have like like Harry Potter
corporate
planet
synergy,
and, like, Superman planet, and
yeah,
exactly. It was a really smart way for them to get like all of their entities into one shot.
Yeah, and that changes with the weather. It's just now they probably have don't have as many or the same ones, and it's probably immediately outdated. One thing I will say while we're on the subject, but I did see a couple years later they made Looney Tunes Back in Action with Brendan Fraser, and I loved that movie.
Was that a sports movie?
That not to my memory was a sports movie.
So
yeah,
I do love though the fact that we have a choice here that is animated, because I don't know that there's too many other movies that you could point to in this particular category that were animated and were such mainstream successes.
That's a great point.
Included elements of animation.
Yeah, because they're so. I mean, the nearest thing would be like an Angels in the Outfield using CGI to show the angels. But that's more special effects than animation, especially for that era. But you're right, Micah. I think something about the sports genre makes you want to see it live action. Like the stakes aren't real, or it didn't exist unless they shot it in live action. So if you did a fully cartoon sports game, what does it matter? They just drew the ball going into the stands. Nobody actually hit that.
Or like the slam dunks are not as impressive because you're just drawing them.
There's not the gravity and the weight and that's a good point. So, there's something to that.
I also think what's really fun about this movie is that Michael Jordan was clearly able to call up like a bunch of his buddies to come and like play in this world too, and they all get like their powers, like their athletic powers, stolen by the goon squad, and but I just like that scene vivid, like where they're all in like hospital gowns, like it's like Charles Barkley and everybody else, like there's
a lot of love. That's where the heart of the movie is. There's a scene where Barkley goes to like a women's pickup game in like on a court somewhere outdoors, and he they're like, oh my God, he's like, can I play? And, then they're not impressed, and they kind of kick him out because he ain't got it anymore. And it's just like, man, how far the mighty fall. But yeah, there's a lot going on in that movie, and I still kind of can't believe it exists, but it was fun to go back to and fun to reminisce on, for different reasons. And I think the Looney Tunes, which was definitely something I watched pretty often growing up, sound great and look great, and I guess we should thank Space Jam for inventing Lola Bunny, because I had a crush when I was very young.
So did Bugs.
Bugs can back off.
All right, well, we have one more movie to go, but before we get there, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.